Before Starfield came out, the hype was real about it. Everyone was so excited about everything that Bethesda Softworks were going to bring with it based on what they had before with Fallout, Skyrim, the works. Everything that they had built so much anticipation for it. And they did a lot of things wrong eventually when the game came out. Starfield pretty much became a shadow of its former self in terms of the potential it had based on the other games. I can go on and on with this. I've already made videos talking about how empty the open world environments are on certain planets, how mediocre and repetitive the enemy engagements are in the game, with the only variation being how they look. The combat is all the same when it comes to these enemies. How when you run around on a planet, you just run into nothingness and it just gets boring really quick. They did one fix, but with everything that they've gotten wrong, in my opinion, they did get a few things right, and one of them being the dialogue. The dialogue system has been significantly improved, and it makes me think, why didn't they just completely overhaul every aspect of this open world game concept? Like in Skyrim and Fallout, how when you explore, there's actually interesting areas that you can explore, dungeons and caves that lead to other treasures and weapons and gear, equipment, or just quest lines that lead you to other areas on the map. It does none of that in Starfield's open world planets. So it just makes me think, why did they not do the same thing they did with the dialogue, which was pretty amazing in my opinion? Before Starfield came out, they boasted and said it reported that Starfield will have over 250,000 lines of dialogue, which completely dwarfs the 60,000 lines within Skyrim, as well as the 111,000 lines in Fallout 4. With so much involved dialogue, Starfield holds an instant advantage over the speech of Skyrim. Now there's a whole article describing this, talking about this, how the dialogue systems of Starfield is set to be expansive, with the mechanic clearly being the point of pride for Bethesda, as well as improvements. The Starfield dialogue will return to the classic Bethesda systems of direct multiple choice speech options, and this differs from the controversial and vague dialogue systems of Fallout. Now, I will agree, even though I didn't really mind how they did it because the game was so immersive and I didn't really care. I just like the idea of how you can use your persuasion skill to make things happen, along with how epic the game was back in the day. Because I will be honest, right? I went to Reddit and I was looking at some of the comparisons that they made between Fallout 4 and Starfield's dialogue, and I didn't think about it until I saw these comparisons. Somebody said nothing's worse than choosing a dialogue option and the actual delivery is completely different. Like, for example, when you hint at something when you're talking to a bandit or somebody else trying to negotiate something, and it hints at you saying something that's disagreeable to them, you completely insult them or do something that will automatically make them attack you with nothing in between. So it was either or. It wasn't like how Starfield is, which is more of a conversation. Some people were saying like the game gives you a second chance at failing a speech check, which I just talked about. When you say the wrong thing, it could ultimately decide what's going to happen in that moment, which is why before certain dialogues I would save so that I could get the outcome that I desire. You don't really have to do that as much in Starfield. It says the game gives you a second chance at failing a speech check. Feels more real since you can still try to persuade them even after they said no. Like in real life, it's more of a conversation, and the more that you add into your persuasion stat on your skill tree, the more points he'll give you in that area to persuade or sway the conversation to your liking. And it also makes people who love charismatics in these games more realistic. Instead of instant persuasion, you move the conversation more into your chosen direction. So this is just confusing to me, right? The dialogue system is so great. Oh yeah, I remember. I really wish that I had recorded this because I've seen so many videos on YouTube where players were messing with the adoring fan. They would beat him up, or they would render him unconscious, or whatever. They would tell him to go away, and they wanted to just see his reaction, how he would respond. Well, I didn't see any videos where people actually killed the adoring fan, and I did just so I can see what would happen, but I ended up killing him in front of Sarah Morgan. She was one of my crewmates, and she just happened to see me do it on the ship, and I was like, oh snap, I didn't mean to do that. But she came up to me like, hey, what is wrong with you? Why did you do that? How dare you? How could you do that? But I ended up having some really good persuasion and charisma, and it ended up being some completely off the wall excuse as to why that happened, and I just completely shifted the conversation in a way that ended up flirting with her, and she just completely forgot about what happened. And that's not really realistic, but the fact that you can actually sway the conversation in that way based on persuasion points and leading up to a point of perspective that you want her to take is brilliant. I mean, honestly, you could really do that in real life. They have con artists that can talk people out of anything. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm confused, right? Why would they not implement this whole system of dialogue and conceptualize that concept for the entire game, the open world play, the enemy interactions, everything? You can't put a great system in a game and leave out everything else. This is why I'm making videos like this. This is why I made a video about how it didn't make Game of the Year, or how it just didn't lead up to what Bethesda Softworks' potential is when it comes to these types of games. I will give credit where it's due, and credit is due in the dialogue system on Starfield, but when it comes to everything else like the combat, the skill tree system with how if you only upgrade stealth and concealment, you can pretty much conquer anything in a game, basically rendering everything else on the skill tree useless when it comes to combat. The enemy behavior, how redundant it is, the open world with how uneventful it is and non-adventurous. I tried my best to live out that fantasy, but I just couldn't. And in so many other areas, Starfield just does not hit that mark. I wish they would implement a lot of the things like they did with the dialogue. Now, they did do some update that is supposed to go into effect this month. Some people have already played it. They did some UI fixes, changed it to where you probably will have a vehicle to traverse the landscape, but you have to make some changes that will really impact the game in a way where people or players can feel it. At least players like me, because I'm a longtime fan of Bethesda and what they've done. But anyways, I just wanted to make this video to let you know one of the things that Starfield has gotten right with the development of the game, because I didn't want to bash it too hard. I'm just a fan that wants to see the game succeed, and I think that tough love is one of the ways to encourage people to do that. Anyways, let me know what you think about this discussion down below. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one. Be right out.